Welcome to the webinar. The title of today's webinar is The Alternative Pencil, Helping Students with Complex Bodies Become Writers. I'm Heidi Brislin and I'm the presenter. Just to give you a little bit of information about myself, I'm an occupational therapist. I've been working for 16 years in the North Kitsap School District and have been primarily doing assistive technology for the last couple of years, kind of dabbled as an OT, I think you always do a little assistive technology. So that's a little about me. The alternative pencil is one of my favorite tools to help these kiddos with really complex bodies become writers. So we'll kind of go through that information today. Here's the learning objectives. I'm going to hopefully by the end of today, I'd like you to kind of understand the developmental progression of writing, how you can use them to teach students authentic writing, and the difference. It says firm, but it should be form, and function of writing. So the difference between the form and function of writing. So what I want you to think about is, why is writing important to you? So just take a second and think about what's important to you when you're writing, and why you write. So people write, and this is just a few ideas, and some of you might come up with way more than this. But we write to share an idea, to share something with someone we know. We write to tell someone how we feel. You might be writing a love note to your significant other, or a letter to your mom or your grandma and letting them know how special they are. I do this a lot. I write so I can remember something. I have a never-ending list of to-do lists on everything. You write to show what you know. So in school, that's what the kids, that's one of the big functions of writing in the academic setting, is to show what you know. And sometimes you write to process information. So say you were just trying to kind of figure something out, and you might write kind of your ideas and stuff just to kind of process it and put it into some form that makes sense to you. There's probably many, many other reasons that we write, but that's a few. And why do we teach literacy? Literacy is I love working with teens and helping them teach literacy to kind of all kids. And literacy, it enhances cognitive development. It facilitates better participation in school. If you can, be literate, you can, if you can write and read, you can actually engage in the curriculum more. Your employment opportunities are better. You're able to use mainstream technologies better. If you have a complex body and you're literate, you may be able to move to an AAC device where you're doing word prediction instead of symbol-based communication, which definitely leads to you being able to say exactly what you want to say. It facilitates social relationships, personal expression, provides, it's really, being able to read and write is a really nice leisure pursuit. Now, for our individuals with complex bodies, it not only does all the things we talked about on the prior slide, it gives them a means to communicate more effectively. It has a profound impact on their self-esteem. Kiddos we've been using the alternative pencil with, when they're doing some writing, they are there, they're with you, they're engaged, and it changes other people's perceptions and attitudes about what that child is capable of. Now, I don't know if any of you have been in a classroom where oh, well, we only teach functional skills. And I love this little meme from Carolyn Musselwhite. She's like, seriously, what is more functional than literacy? So really looking at how can we make sure that we're giving every child the opportunity to develop those essential literacy skills. I'm not going to read all these too. They'll be in the PowerPoint. I'll try to highlight them. But the Literacy Bill of Rights, which is adapted from Yonder, Erickson, and Copenhagen, basically that everyone should have the opportunity to learn to read and write. They should have accessible material that allows them to be able to read. They should have the right to interact with others. I think of that shared reading, developmentally, how important is that shared reading. And then, the right to make life choices. How often do we make a choice of what we're going to buy or where we're going to go on vacation because we've read and researched about it? They should have those opportunities as well. And making sure that they have lifelong educational opportunities that incorporate literacy. And I highlighted it, literacy are educational opportunities, regardless of when they are provided, have the potential to provide power that cannot be taken away. So if you give a child the tools of literacy, that is a hugely powerful tool as far as being able to communicate their needs and interact with their world. And they have a right to have staff working with them who are knowledgeable about literacy instructions and methods for a variety of learners. To have live in environments where there's lots of print models in use, and that where people have expectations that all individuals are literacy learners. So when you finish today, if that's what your takeaway is that everyone, can learn to write, then I feel like I've kind of, done my job, because I believe that every child can be a reader and writer. It's just going to look really, really different for some of our kiddos. This was just a really, interesting statistic that kindergartners who are typically developing and are from middle-class homes and are exposed to literacy from infancy enter formal schooling with more than 1,000 hours of early literacy experiences. I mean, that's huge. So you look at our students who have complex bodies or complex communication needs, they haven't entered school with the same number of literacy opportunities that their typically developing peers have. So lots of catch up, for them, and lots of kind of filling the tank to give them some of those literacy things. So when looking at teaching literacy to students who have complex needs, whether it's communication or motor, you always have to start with this attitude of presuming competence. You want to presume that, we're going to give this a try, and we're going to presume that you're going to be able to learn it. So often our students are approached with this, I'm not going to do that until you can prove to me you can do it. And the burden of proof should not be on the student. The burden of proof needs to be on us to figure out how to provide them with these literacy opportunities in a method where they can engage and interact with the curriculum. So, to not presume competence is to actively do harm. You're kind of limiting the child before they even get there. So just, kind of go in with that philosophy that all children are capable of learning, and they're learners, and we're going to figure out how to provide the information to them in an accessible manner so that they can learn. I want to spend a minute and talk about the form and function of writing. And as an OT, I can tell you I have been on that, started off early in my career, and probably until fairly recently, where my focus was really on that form. I'm going to make sure you can form those letters, and really working on the motor skills for form. And we'd get these beautifully formed letters, and the children would have no clue what they were or how to, put them into, a sentence or, anything about the function of writing. So form is, how it looks, what it looks like. And form follows function in language development. So if we haven't taught them the function of writing, the form doesn't mean anything. And so the function is why we write, and it has a developmental progression that starts with scribbling, and then moves on, and I have a slide that will show that in a minute, but I can remember my daughter, who's 17 now, when she first started writing, she'd be sitting in the car with a pad of paper, and we would have pages and pages and pages of scribble marks and on the lines, and so she was getting that sense of the line, and then pretty soon a letter or two would show up, and then some letters would show together, or we'd have a whole string of A's and a whole string of D's, and her name's Molly, we'd have a whole page of M's, and and then eventually it kind of started to look more like words. And we really need to look at, and that was like that's developmentally how these kiddos, how normally developing kids progress through learning the function of writing. And so we really need to look at changing our focus to where we're teaching the function before we're teaching the form. And many of our kids come to school with us in kindergarten and they don't understand the function of writing. And you want to choose a pencil that allows the most brain power for function, and where you're not so stuck on the form that the brain can't figure out what to do with these letters. Writing is not copying or tracing. There's lots of evidence that copying and tracing are fine motor tasks that do not facilitate the process of writing. And I still go into special ed classroom after special ed classroom, and they're either copying something off the board or tracing something, and that's not teaching them to write. What copying and tracing teaches, they also do not teach us that print has meaning. They don't teach us why people write, what it means to be a writer, how to think like a writer. It's not developing any of those writing skills. So we need to figure out how to start teaching that function of writing so that they get those skills of why people write and that print has meaning. I'm going to sit this up here for a little bit and just kind of let you read this for a minute. So again, Jane Farrell talking about, we're teaching them the form and not the function. And, getting back to that print is a code for speech, and you want to teach them the functions of print that allow them to develop as writers. So here's the slide that looks at the stages of writing. And, you can see you've got a scribble stage and a symbolic stage and a directional scribble, and some kind of mock letters where they're kind of playing with lines to make some letters. And then you get a string of letters and, groups of letters, and they may label pictures. Then they start to look like words, and then you start to get, some beginning phrase writing at the bottom where you can kind of figure out what they're saying. And then you get, some sentence writing. So that's developmentally how kiddos, students learn to write. And so, looking at our children who have difficulties with writing because of either a significant fine motor impairment or a complex body or complex communication needs, if we're starting them, at that transitional where we're just going to work on the letters, and we haven't given them all those pre-literate and emergent state opportunities, it's very difficult for them to become a fluent functional writer. So writing development happens because of literacy experiences, adults attributing meaning to writing or scribbling. So, when my daughter would present me with his notebooks of scribbling, we would talk about, what is the story? Or I had a little first grader one year, and he came in and he had written this page of just random, alphabet letters, a full page, and just beautiful handwriting. And I had an author chair, and I said, okay, sit down and tell me your story. And he had this, probably spent about 10 minutes telling me this amazing story about pirates and a ship. And so he was learning the function of writing. And so, we could have worked on, like I said, his letters were really good, but he didn't have that function piece yet of this is why we write. And so that was how he was learning the function of writing. They need to have a lot of those emergent writing opportunities, those opportunities to scribble and play with the letters. And students with disabilities need even more emergent writing opportunities. It takes 3.5 years for typically developing children to develop from an emergent to an early conventional writer, and it's going to take students with disabilities even longer than that. So what we want to do is, you want to come up with what are the conditions of literacy learning. We want to have high expectations. We want to have approximations, anything kind of close or errors or accepted and celebrated. Meaning is attributed to all attempts. Load it with modeling, so 24/7 immersion with a more knowledgeable model, have them buddy write with a peer. And children with significant disabilities benefit from the same literacy experiences and instructional approaches used with typically developing children. This is my prior special ed director's daughter's scribbling. So she was 4 at the time, and if you look, she's got her name, she's got her brother's name, and then we have a string of letters. Some letters are repeated in order, some letters are repeated out of order. We're starting to see a little bit of spaces between the letters. And then what I loved is all of a sudden we start seeing a whole bunch of emojis, which is really the reality of scribbling for this digital, all these digital natives for us. And she's got a picture, and her story is about her picture. It's about her and her mom and dad and her brother Jackson and, doing something. So you can kind of see what typically emergent writing looks like. These are some other examples from some students, some special ed students that one of my coworkers has worked with, and looking at them being excited about the function of writing. And so you can just see, we've done some things using clicker on the iPad, on the chalkboard, and they're just, again, when you bring up, you have them write. So the first example, let me get my pointer, maybe. Over here is, he's got his name, but lots of scribbling, and he could tell her exactly what he meant by this. This is another student who just had scribbled a story on the board, and then again could tell us what the story was. And this is one where she would let the child write and say, okay, what does your sentence say? And then she would write the sentence for them again. So you can see, like, catch the fish, you're getting some of the sounds there. You're getting, the C and the F, and so they're starting to get some of that sound symbol correlation there. What is the alternative pencil? So the alternative pencil was developed by Hanser in 2009 at the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies. And an alternative pencil is defined as anything that provides the student with access to all 26 letters of the alphabet. They have a very specific alternative pencil model that we'll be looking at and kind of talking about how to use it here in a little bit. If you go to their website, the alternative pencil software is now a free download. And so you can download the templates for the variety of alternative pencils. So definitely, again, super easy tool to implement and use, and very low tech. Who are they for? They're created for students who are not able to hold a pencil or physically manipulate a standard keyboard. They can be used as pencils with students who are all sorts of writers and abilities. Sometimes some of those kiddos who are just resistant to writing, if you take over with the alternative pencil, you'll see them engage in writing more. And the alternative pencil is basically, you have an alphabet strip and you're asking them what letter they want, and you are the writer. And so those kids who are just so resistant to writing, sometimes it'll give them some more of that experience with the function of writing, during that time, until they kind of feel a little bit more confident with writing. Okay, how to use it. So your kids with complex bodies, you have to teach a yes-no response. So if you can only have one, go for yes. And I really, I don't know how often I go and chat with a team and they're like, well, I think they smile for yes, and I think they do this for no. And you don't want to let them tell you what their yes-no is. You want to start teaching these kids their yes-no. And if you can get it as close to a normal approximation of that yes-no head movement, the better, because then they're able to be understood with that yes-no response by anybody. And if they're sitting in a room and there's a conversation going on about the Seahawks and the kids nodding their head, they're part of that conversation, and, people around them perceive them as, more competent than they had before they were able to have that head nod. So definitely, I'd say all of our complex students in our district have some type of IEP goal about a yes/no head nod or shake. You want to find a topic of interest to the student, and so typically what's really good is putting together a photo album for the kid of things that they love, or family members, or their dog, or their horse, or their cat, and letting them make some choices about what to write about. So then it's authentic writing. I think my least favorite writing activity that happens probably in a lot of first grade classrooms still is, how was your weekend? If your weekend was great, you might have a lot to write about, but if not, you won't. And so you want to give them something that they are excited to write about. And you want to give the students given all the letters of the alphabet to write with. For emergent writers, the partner goes through each letter, and I have a video kind of showing that. The student chooses the letter they want, whether they know the letter or not. So if you're going, do you want A, do you want B, do you want C? You get a nod for C. Oh, you want C, and the partner writes that down right where they can see it. And then, for an emergent writer, the partner tells them, what's the name of it? You chose C. You wrote C. I'm going to put C down here. And if you get a whole string of C's, you really chose a lot of C's. Let's see what we can find that starts with the word C, and kind of go around there. All your AAC devices have an alphabet on them, so they can be used as an alternative pencil. Again, like we talked about, how to teach yes/no movements. So there's fun songs you can choose. You can have voice output switches to give an example. So there's some teeny tiny little button switches, and you can have one say yes and one say no. And you can put one near their cheek, and if they slightly move in that direction, you hit the button and say no. And if they bend down and slightly bend their head down or up, you hit the one that says yes, so they start getting some feedback. They don't have to hit the switch. You're just giving them the feedback of, oh, I see you moved your head to the side. I'm going to take that as no. Or I see you moved your head down. I'm going to take that as yes. But definitely, verbally reinforce what you're seeing, because that's how they learn to refine those yes/no head movements. There's no exclusion criteria for the alternative pencil. No student is too delayed, too impaired, or too poorly behaved. Students can learn to write regardless of their perceived ability or skill set, and they don't need to be a proficient speller to start exploring the act of writing. And again, think of that typically developing, if we kind of go back to that, typically developing the function of writing and kind of focus on teaching our students with complex needs how to write from a developmental perspective. I think you'll see some really nice things from your students. This is just a nice little quote. I have a right to write even if I can't hold a pencil. And we talked a little bit about literacy experiences early, giving the student power. If you give the student the knowledge of the alphabet, they have power. And so if, say, you're the partner or the caregiver and you're trying to figure out what's wrong, and you're going through the alternative pencil and you get a S then a T, you can figure out it's probably their stomach, or even an S. That kind of gives you a starting point. Is it your stomach? And so it gives you a place to kind of figure out what they know instead of this never-ending guessing game. So it gives them power to kind of show you what they know. My one young woman who you'll see a video of in a little while, she's a 7th grader, and we found out just by using the alternative pencil to answer some comprehension questions in class, that she's got some literacy skills, and so we had the answer to the question was cooking, and she was able to go through with her aide and get Kuukng. That's pretty close to figure out the correct answer was cooking. So it gives them some power to kind of show what they know. So the next slide is what the alternative pencil looks like. So this is one example of the alternative pencil. It's an alphabet flip chart. So it has A, B, C, D on one page, E, F, G, so on and so forth throughout there. And then it has turn the page. So as they get, initially what you're going to do is you're going to say, do you want A? And you're going to wait with that expectant pause. And you might wait 10, 15 seconds. No response, take that as your no. Move over, do you want B? And you get like a head movement down. You want B, I'm going to write B on the paper. And then if developmentally kids repeat strings of letters, so you always go back to B. So our next letter we'd be like, do you want B? Yes. So you'd write a B, and you'd say, do you want B? No. Then you'd go to C. Do you want C? Yes. And you'd write C, and then you'd go back, do you want C? Yes. And so you'll get that developmentally kind of how they'll go through the letters. As they progress, you can go to, is it on this page? A, B, C, D? Nope. Okay, I'm going to turn the page. Is it on this page? Do you want me to turn the page? Yes. This is, I'm trying to remember what that one is. I think this one is I'm finished. I need a space, add a space is what that is. And then finish, so that they learn to kind of end their word or end their sentence. And you just go with it. If you get something that looks like a yes, you put that letter down there, whether you think they meant it or not. And then often, if we just have a string of random letters, I'll come up with either something in the picture or something that we were writing about that, if we had a picture of the fish tank and we got a I and an H, I'll say, oh, you wrote the letters I and H. I'm going to write fish right here. Look, fish has an I and an H. And then, circle those in the word so that they can see them. The alternative pencils come in all different colors, and so you can play with kids with some cortical visual impairment for getting the right color for them. This is an eye gaze frame, and it's double-sided. So kind of what you see on your side is mirrors what the student says. And so how this one works is you have the student say, okay, we're going to do some writing. Is it on the pink card, the yellow card, the green card, the blue card, or the red card? Eyes go over to the red card, and you're going to be like, okay, is it the pink letter, the yellow letter, the green letter, the blue letter, the red letter? And then whatever card that they look at, so say if I look over here and they look at the pink, I'm going to say, oh, you picked the letter that's on the pink card. You want the letter U. So that's how it works with the eye gaze frame. They have some that are in sign language. You can work with your vision person and get one made in Braille. And again, you're using partner-assisted scanning. Do you want A? Do you want B? Do you want C? And just make sure you allow that wait time. I think that's a mistake that a lot of us make, is that sometimes it's counting to a full 10, 20, and that's really hard to do. Eventually they get faster. So again, any alphabet can be an alternative pencil. So the alphabet on the AAC device, alphabet in your pod book, a print copy of the alphabet, an alphabet strip, on their desk. So you don't have to have like the fancy, not fancy, the regular alternative pencil to use this. It's a bit of a perceptual puzzle when you make the alternative pencil, but how I make them is I just take it comes in a template with the alphabet letters in colored strips, and so I cut the colored strips, run them through the laminator, cut them out, and then I just use packing tape and put them together in a little flip book. You can use the little combine things or a spiral binder if you have one, but I just go low tech with packing tape. And then the two sides that flip out, I just kind of tape those on the back, and I might pop a piece of Velcro on the back of each of those to put them out of the way when I have kids who aren't ready for them. But they're super easy to make. The biggest thing is just making sure when you tape the pages of the book together, they flip to where everything's in the right order and the right way up. I'm going to attempt to share my desktop here, and I have a video of my friend Danae using the alternative pencil. It's going to sound a little bit choppy because it's a longer video and you're going to be hearing it through my computer. So please be patient with that and just really kind of watch the functions. So what her para is asking her to do is she's going to spell the word sister because she's answering a question and they're spelling the word sister. So it's a little bit different than kind of how we talk because she understands the function of writing, and so we're really working on some responses with her. It's slow, but she's getting a response there. So you can have the child not engaged and not participate, or you can go at their speed and get them to actually produce some stuff. You will hear in the video, I did part of this presentation at the Washington OT Association conference, and you'll hear her para on the video say, come on, you got to do this, Miss Heidi needs this. And so I normally don't put that kind of pressure on kids, but it just so happened that we were trying to get some good video. So anyway, that's not normally how we kind of do things. So here, let's see. All right. Are you guys seeing, and I can't see the chat window. Are you guys seeing the video? Katrina, can you see it? Let's see. I'm going to, all right. If you can type in the window, if when I went and shared my desktop, if you could see the video, then I know for sure you could see it looked like a BCD. That would be great. I can't see both once I share them. Okay, all right, here we go then. We're going to go back. Is the first letter. Oops, sorry about that. Oops. Is the first letter for sister on this page? Yes or no? No. Very good. Okay. So the answer is no. So we're going to turn the page. Try to do this with one hand. Okay. The first letter of the word sister on this page. We're looking for the letter that says, is that on this page? Yes or no? No. Okay. So you said no. We're going to turn the page. She's trying to videotape and do this, so someone eventually takes the camera from her. Sister, the letter that says, is it on this page? Yes or no? Is the letter on this page? No. Okay. You said no. So turn the page. Yeah, if somebody could, that'd be great. Okay. Danae, is the word, the letter that makes the sound, is it on this page? Do you see it on this page? Oh, you know the camera is behind you now, don't you? Okay. Right. We need to focus on this, all right? Miss Heidi is looking for this. All right. So the first letter of sister makes us sound. Is that letter on this page? Is that letter on this page? Do you see
verbal yes. Okay. Danae, is this the letter that makes the E sound? Can you give me head motion? Yes or no? Is that the letter that makes this sound? Are your eyes looking at the letter?
So at this point, she is staring down the S.
Would you be pointing to this letter right here? Danae? Is this the letter you would be pointing to if you had eye gaze on? You gotta look up. You gotta give me a yes or a no. I know you. Okay, you have something to say, right? So is this the letter you would be looking at? Is that the sound? Yeah. Is that a yes? Are you saying yes? Nuh-uh. Is that the one? Keep staring at that letter. Yes, chin went down. So that is the first letter of that word.
Okay, so it's not fast and efficient. The video is about 4 minutes long, but she does get there. Ellen knows her really, really well, and so some of her, sounds, she's got some sounds that sometimes sound pretty close to a yes and no. And we've been doing some things on a modified eye gaze frame with her as well. And so she's pretty good at kind of staring down what she wants. And so she realized right away she's staring at the S. So I'm going to move through the rest of the alphabet and get her there a little quicker. All right, so great. We've got this alternative pencil. We've got this fantastic tool to help our students with complex bodies become writers. How on earth are we going to put that in the IEP? So what I've put here is, in your present levels of performance on your IEP, you really want to explain kind of what the alternative pencil is. And I'm pretty comfortable using it in, using the terminology for it, because it's free and it's, any alphabet. And just kind of, so it's not something that they're having to go buy a special curriculum for. And kind of just explaining kind of what it is and how it works. And then in the present levels, I talk about, and this is from Hanser as well, the stages that students go through. So they repeat letters in order. It doesn't have to include each letter. So as you can see here, we've got A, 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 B, D, H, T. And then stage 2 is they repeat letters out of order. So you get, like F and D and M and A. And then you start getting some letter patterns typically, and then you start getting some random spaces in between letters, and you start getting some word-like groupings. So those are the 5 stages that I'll put in the present levels of performance. And then, then you want to talk about, the student is currently able to complete self-generated writing by selecting blank letters at a stage 1. So if they're just repeating, letters in order, and that we want them to be able to, progress from, making a choice. Let's see, let me read what I wrote here. Oh, this is them making a choice of what they're going to write out of. So what they're going to write from. So they might have a field of 2 choices or 5 choices. So they're making that choice. So they're doing some authentic writing. And then this one is, we're going to start with, say right now we're not doing any repeated out of order. They're all repeated in order. And so our goal by the end of the year, you might start off with 0 letters repeated out of order to 15 letters repeated out of order during a 10-minute writing activity, 2 out of 5 days, or you can kind of figure out what'll work for your student. I'm going to skip over questions and we'll go back. I just want to share this quote with you. I don't know how many of you have followed the We Speak Pod Facebook page, but Karen Owens has used the alternative pencil with her children. She's got 3 children at home with complex needs, and so if you go on her Facebook, she hasn't posted in a while, but if you go and look back, you can see some video examples of hers. But I'm just going to read it. It's like, never let us mix up performance with intelligence. Some of the most brilliant kids have yet to be set free simply because the adults in their world have yet to learn how to serve them and pull out that potential. Let's not get stuck in the performance trap. Our job is to believe that every child is to believe in every child. Every child needs and deserves that champion. So, I think it's our jobs to kind of go and be that champion for these students. At the end, there's a whole bunch of websites that you'll get when you get the PowerPoint that kind of give you, there's both some reading and writing literacy supports here, but definitely I would recommend going to the Alternative Pencil website. It's just really, so there's some videos in there, there's some IEP kind of helps and stuff, but just download the tools to kind of make, yourself some alternative pencils. I'm going to stop recording so that people can ask questions if they have any.